I think that to understand why the committee did this and the effectiveness that it's had, we have to remember the other investigations of Donald Trump. He was impeached twice, never convicted, and obviously removed from office. The Mueller investigation, which looked at whether he broke the law, did not even make a decision about whether he actually broke the law. These investigations failed to stop Trump. He was unbound, unbridled, and continued on to do essentially what he wanted. So when this committee is formed, it took a different perspective and a different approach. It was staffed differently. They put a former U.S. attorney, Tim Heaphy, in charge of the day-to-day work of the investigation. And starting from that time, where Liz Cheney read from the criminal code, they approached the public like a jury at a criminal trial. Mm-hmm. And they spoke to them like they were trying to build the criminal elements. Most congressional investigations are about revealing new facts and providing recommendations on whether new legislation should be there. This committee's public posture has been criminality, criminality, criminality. How can we show this? How can we educate the public about it? And up until the middle of the summer, we didn't really know that the Justice Department was actually doing anything and actually investigating this. So whether the Justice Department would have gotten there or not without the committee, certainly the perception exists that the committee is the one that pushed the Justice Department and Merrick Garland there.
The assistance that the committee had in this effort seems to also include a federal judge who said this, and this was around litigation, I think, for John Eastman's records. Judge David Carter ruled in an extraordinary ruling that, quote, the illegality of the plan was obvious. Our nation was founded on the peaceful transition of power epitomized by George Washington laying down his sword to make way for democratic elections. Ignoring this history, President Trump vigorously campaigned for the vice president to single-handedly determine the results of the 2020 election. Based on the evidence, the court finds it more likely than not that President Trump corruptly attempted to obstruct the joint session of Congress on January 6, 2021. What was the impact of a federal judge basically corroborating Liz Cheney's citation and saying, I've looked at some of the evidence and it's abundantly clear he committed that crime?
So what the committee did is that it built different arguments and used building blocks to make the larger point about criminality. And in one of its more unusual moves, it went to federal court earlier this year and essentially filed what I call the de facto indictment of Trump and Eastman in this fight in a court in California, in federal court, about whether they could get certain documents from Eastman. And they basically laid out the criminality as if they were laying out an indictment, but it was in this civil matter. And then the judge agreed with them. The judge said it was more likely than not that someone had broken the law, that the law had been broken. And that gave the committee even more. So it wasn't just the committee saying, oh, I think there's criminality here. It allowed them to say a federal judge agrees with or close enough agrees with our assessment. And they continued to beat the drum more and more aggressively in public on that, in the media they did. And then by the time that they get to the hearings over the summer, they are lining these hearings up, and as I was saying before, like a criminal trial, and speaking to the public like it's a jury, and trying to build these cases like they're criminal cases, even though they have no power criminally whatsoever. They can make referrals to the Justice Department, but beyond that, all they can do is try and move public support. But they focus the public's attention on criminality, and it certainly looks like they focus the Justice Department on it as well.
You know, Michael Steele, they've also turned Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy into complicit actors. I mean, what comes through loud and clear is that all this went on very much, if not in public view, with a nod and a wink and the help of at least 19 Republican members of Congress. And I wonder if you look at the committee's work, if you look at the pile, and really the final public hearing was the culmination of these three towers of evidence that they sought to build. One, that he knew he lost. It was featured in the very first one. They came back to it at the end. Two, that he knew the things he was saying were, in Bill Barr's words, BS, that all these conspiracy theories had, in my view, inappropriately been investigated by DOJ, and they came back and said not true. And three, that he was well aware of the violence and wanted to be there for it.
Yeah, I think all of that very accurately is laid out by the committee. I think, you know, to Michael's fine reporting, it is very clear from the very beginning what the emphasis by this committee would be, given the limitations on its power. It had to convince two audiences. One was the Justice Department, the other was the American people. And at any given moment in time throughout the course of this summer, one or the other was the priority of that particular hearing. Whether it was from the very beginning where they wanted to bring the American people to this narrative in a way that they would want to sit back at the beginning of summer in their comfy summer chairs with a drink in their hand and follow along, or more compelling moments where they would bring witnesses out who were in the room where it happened, who had ear on the ground to know what was taking place, to lay out the evidentiary part of this as they saw it and as they were gathering it for the Justice Department. Very adeptly done. And I think we're going to see, as this comes to its conclusion with the final report, if not maybe perhaps one more hearing, who knows, that this committee's work is not done. And what's going to be important, I think, for everyone to understand, and again, it's sort of a thread in Michael's reporting, that this committee, yeah, we stand down because there'll be a change in Congress, but we want to lay this thing out in such a way that we don't go away, that the work doesn't get dismissed and disappears. And I think that's going to be a very, very important element after the election for the country to understand that, yeah, the committee may disappear with a Republican majority in January, but that's your choice to make now in November. But even if you choose to have this committee go away, its work will go on. And that's where the Justice Department will pick up. That's where we see a lot of this evidence also play itself out in places like Georgia and New York.
And I know this is the point in the program we say that the Republican takeover is not a foregone conclusion. Michael Steele, I want to come back to you with one more piece of evidence that even in the committee's telling was a turning point. This was a lot of the public hearings were moved, but none of them were sprung on us. None of them were dramatically and suddenly added, except the testimony of Cassidy Hutchinson. This also reportedly caught a lot of attention and was compelling even to the Justice Department, which we can talk about whether that's good or bad after. But let me show you some of Cassidy Hutchinson's dramatic testimony.
So, Ms. Hutchinson, is it your understanding that Mr. Ornato told the president about weapons at the rally on the morning of January 6th?
That's what Mr. Ornato relayed to me.
His response was to say they can march to the Capitol from the ellipse.
Something to the effect of, take the effing mags away. They're not here to hurt me. Let them in. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol after the rally's over. The president said something to the effect of, I'm the effing president. Take me up to the Capitol now. To which Bobby responded, sir, we have to go back to the West Wing. The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol. Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And I remember Pat saying to him something to the effect of, the rioters have gotten to the Capitol, Mark. We need to go down and see the president now. And Mark looked up at him and said, he doesn't want to do anything, Pat. No, Michael Steele, we'll see if the Justice Department finds
evidence that Trump committed crimes, but the committee believes that these two Secret Service agents lied to it. And in an interview on this program, one member of the committee did not rule out, if those lies cannot be rectified, criminal referrals for lying to Congress. What do you make of sort of the pileup of corruption and criminality that has also been revealed by the Select Committee's work?
In one word, stunning. It has been absolutely stunning to watch this side narrative, if you will, unfold the way it has. Cassidy was not one of those folks, to your first point about, suddenly we have this hearing with her. I think a lot of people inside of MAGA world were banking that everyone would hold the line. Everyone's going to hold the line on behalf of Donald Trump because he is dear leader. But people have a conscience, and they see how good men and women can and have been corrupted by all of this, and so they speak out. We saw that with Mar-a-Lago, where someone inside the room said, "You know what? He's hiding more documents. Y'all should look over here." So we have these moments, Nicole, where people step into that time, to their time, where they share what they know. And now we have revelations about the Secret Service, the corruption and the corrupting elements of that service to the country by the MAGA type mindset. And I think there's going to be more revealed on this narrative. And I think, again, it feeds the underlying story for the DOJ that completes so many elements of the puzzle that they're trying to put together with respect to criminality and accountability, as Mike noted earlier, that this is the moment where it all kind of comes together, and it has to fit. Why? Because it's true. It works. It's not one of those things that you sort of look at it and go, well, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it all kind of makes sense now. It all seems like, now I understand how we got from A to B to C to D. And I think that's going to be, again, a compelling part of this story that the Justice Department cannot turn its eyes away from. And it's been reported in the Atlantic and elsewhere, they seemingly are prepared to take that leap of faith that they got the goods and they're ready to put it in front of a grand jury.